Only one book out of the entire winter was a 3-star, the rest was 5. So honestly, I'll take it. Y'all like my James Baldwin sticker here on my phone? I'm not gonna lie, I absolutely adore it. The first book that I read in the winter is Iris Kelly Doesn't Date. Her stories tend to be really easy to read, with a lighthearted romance and a inner character struggle that is typically really well done. I liked Iris's family. I have the same gripe as this book that I've had with all the other books throughout the entire trilogy, and that is that the BIPOC characters only tend to serve the white love interest and or the white main character of the story. They don't have a life of their own. One of the only recurring BIPOC characters in this entire book was a friend of Stevie's who happened to be butch and Asian, I think. And the only reason I'm saying I think is because that's how much the characters really stuck out to me. And I also didn't get a sense into the professor that Stevie loves and adores, like their life at all, who happens to be, I believe, Black. But again, the only reason I'm saying I believe is because none of the characters really stuck out to me. Maybe I'll make another video about how sometimes I find that in a lot of white queer stories, the BIPOC characters in the story never happen to be the love interest, and when they are, they typically tend to be fetishized, so... Anyway, moving on. The next book I read was the Luis Ortega Survival Club. I absolutely adored this book. I really appreciated the way that Ari, a neurodivergent BIPOC person, is depicted. I also appreciated the way that her being selectively mute impacted her everyday life, even with her parents. With this particular story, what really stood out to me was the found family aspect, which found family is always a trope that has a special place in my heart. Personally, the only thing that I could say as a slight critique was that I wasn't captivated by the romance. However, it didn't impede my enjoyment of the book, and it unfolded naturally. The next book I read was You Were Born for This. As someone who was newly developing an interest in astrology, I so appreciate the way that Chani broke down very basic concepts of astrology so that it's very easy to understand. I think it's an excellent book if you're just starting your astrology journey and wanting to know the basic principles of it. The next book I read is When No One Is Watching. I thoroughly enjoyed this book so much. I gave it 4.5 stars. The only reason I gave it a 4.5 instead of a 5 stars was because I felt like the beginning of the book particularly was a little oddly paced. However, I understood why she paced it the way that she did. She was trying to build up the historical context because it did pay off in the end. I appreciated the way that this particular neighborhood was so friendly and almost family-like. This particular book is a dual POV, and I also loved being in each character's heads, which I always don't find that to be the case in a dual POV, so that was a pleasant surprise. If you appreciate something that has history in it, that has well-rounded characters, and that does have a really good payoff, I highly recommend this book. Last but certainly not least is A Woman Is No Man. This book didn't feel like a debut. This felt like someone who has been writing stories for years and I'm about to be swept into their world again. I love when I have the feeling that I am in the hands of an author who knows what they're doing, and immediately that's what I felt when I read Itof's work. I was so invested in Isra's and Dea's journey. Each point of view added another layer, another depth to the story. Sometimes with a dual point of view, it doesn't feel like there's a particularly good reason for them to have a dual point of view, but with this book, it felt so enriching to the story.